You are listening to the ADHD Support Talk Radio Podcast. This is your co-host, Tara McGillicuddy. This episode of the ADHD Support Talk Radio Podcast is sponsored by the ADHD Time Management Expert Series, 5 hours of on-demand webinars, which you can access completely free until April 17th, 2019. Sign up now for free by going to www.addclasses.com/time. That's www.addclasses.com/time. Today, I am broadcasting an episode which originally aired at the 2017 ADHD Awareness Expo with Lynne Edris. And today, Lynne and I are going to talk about being on time and in control when you have ADHD.
I'm an ADHD coach. Again, my name is Lynne Edris. My website is www.coachingaddvantages.com. So it's coaching advantages with 2 Ds. It's a little play on words, and you can contact me through there, learn more about me, what I do, all that good stuff.
Okay. So this is an important topic. So let's start talking about being on time and in control. Where would you like to begin, Lynne?
I'll just let her rip if that's all right with you.
Great.
Okay, great. So I do want to kind of add a little bit more about myself. As I mentioned, I'm an ADHD coach, and I've been a coach for quite a while, at least a decade now. And of course, again, you can learn more about me, personally, professionally, what I do, where I come from, all that kind of stuff at my website. Again, it's www.coachingaddvantages.com. But I think it's important that you realize that I get this topic more than many people do. I mean, I really get it. I'm a woman with ADHD myself, and one of my biggest struggles historically has been with punctuality. It was a struggle most of my life. I have 3 sisters and a mom who are all very ADD, so I come from a whole family of chronically tardy women, as we call it. My poor father spent a good portion of my childhood alone in the car waiting for us. So I grew up pretty much, being late and being surrounded by tardiness. And I developed a reputation when I was a young adult for being late, much to my dismay. And when I was in my 20s, I realized that some of my really good friends had been telling me that the events and things we were doing together started earlier than they really did, so that I wouldn't hold them up. And that was really tough for me to hear, because I'm a pretty smart cookie. I'm very responsible otherwise. I mean, that's who I am. That's who I want to be. And who I don't want to be is the chick they have to tell the party starts at 8 when it really starts at 8:30 or 9. So fast forward some 20 some odd years or more, and it's a completely different story. I'm actually the reliable one. I'm the punctual one. And it's not easy for me, but I've learned how to be that way. So I mean it when I say that if I can learn to be on time, you can too, because I really do get it. Our struggle with being on time, our struggle with being punctual isn't just a nuisance, and it isn't just an inconvenience. It impacts every single area of our lives. There are social, interpersonal impacts. So people draw conclusions about us when we're late, about our character and about who we are. So no matter how good our intentions are and how much we strive to be punctual, when we're late, especially chronically late, people perceive us as flaky, inconsiderate, disrespectful, and even unreliable. And even if those labels don't really match who we are on the inside, that's how we're showing up to others when we are consistently and chronically late. And it impacts our work, it impacts our careers, our schooling, and many of us have lost opportunities at work or at school because of our difficulty with being on time. I've had many clients over the years who've either actually lost jobs or missed out on career advancement because they really can't show up on time. So of course, there's a real financial component to our struggle with punctuality in sort of the bigger picture, not to mention in the day-to-day, way it hits us in the wallet. So speeding tickets, missed appointment fees, and other late fees, and on and on and on. So it really can take a big toll, on our wallets, on our financial well-being. And of course, our struggle with punctuality creates a lot of stress for us when we're constantly on high alert, when we're constantly rushing and racing against the clock, as well as stress for those who are waiting for us and who are counting on us. But it also impacts our self-concept, how we feel about ourselves and how we see ourselves. Eventually, if we don't get a handle on our late tendencies, let's call it that, we can start to see ourselves as flaky. We can start to see ourselves as unreliable as well. And we start to believe that we don't have control of our lives or our futures. So if the cost of being late all the time, if the toll associated with being seen as flaky and unreliable by others and by yourselves is so high, why don't we get it together? Because it's not easy. And I know that, firsthand. People with ADHD struggle with punctuality because we tend to have what I call like a wonky sense of time. We tend to be what we call time blind. We have difficulty judging the flow of time. We have difficulty estimating how long tasks take or remembering how long they've taken in the past. Our sense of time tends to be sort of subjective and situational. So it tends to be dependent on how interested in or stimulated we are in the moment. So when we're bored or we're disengaged, time feels like it moves really slowly. When we're interested or when we're stimulated, time feels like it flies. Also, our ADD-related executive function challenges impact our ability to be on time. Punctuality requires organizing, it requires planning, it requires prioritization, and all of those things can be a struggle with ADD with our executive function challenges. Many of us with ADD also have a related sort of a punctuality-related problem that I call one more thing-itis. And that is when you have to do that, just that one more thing, before you head out the door, that one more thing that makes you kind of on the wrong side of being on time. And that one more thing-itis is definitely a symptom of poor task management. So not being organized and on top of things we need to do can cause that one more thing-itis to be a really big problem. And that is kind of all wrapped up in time management. So if we don't have good skills and good kind of habits and behaviors in place for task management and the bigger picture time management stuff, one more thing-itis is definitely going to get in our way of being on time. Some of us also have what I call a fear of being early. And, you've heard of FOMO, I call it phobia. So sometimes for a lot of us with ADHD, it feels like being bored or being idle is worse than being late. And this, again, can be a symptom of poor task management and poor time management. When we're always behind, we can't stand the thought of wasting time waiting or being early when there's so much to do. And these are all things that can contribute to why it's so difficult for an individual with ADHD to be on time consistently. So as individuals with ADD, we have all these things working against our natural ability to be on time, but it doesn't mean that it's not something we can't learn to do. And seriously, if I can learn to do it, anybody can. It's important to keep in mind the benefits of learning to be on time. So in ADHD coaching, we want to get the client in touch with what the real payback is for them when they're trying to make a change. And in terms of punctuality, that payback is going to be a little bit different depending on the individual and what's important to them in terms of their values. But the bigger picture, sort of the general payback, is that you can actually reach your potential. You can end the stress and the struggle of constantly being late and have more energy for what's really important to you, what you really care about, whether that's your family, your friends, your career, your education, other things that you want to have more energy for you, for your hobbies, for your own interests and things you care about those. Those things that matter to you, those things that bring meaning to your life. Remember those? So many of us lose track of the things that make our lives feel more fulfilling when we're living on a hamster wheel that life becomes when we're always late and we're always behind. So improving punctuality improves you and it improves the quality of your life kind of overall, really, in just about every aspect. But most of all, it puts you back in control of your time and in control of your life. So before I get to solutions, I'm always compelled to give you my little coaching disclaimer. First and foremost, you need to know that coaching isn't just about tips and tricks and tools. It's much deeper and much bigger than that. So when I'm working on punctuality with a client, we're going to go much deeper than general tools and tactics. But I'm going to give you sort of the tip of the iceberg here, in this expo video. First off, your thinking needs to change. So if you want to be on time, you need to address how your thinking may be getting in the way. I know that's not the first thing, my clients think of when we start working on punctuality. So I want you to think about, what does on time mean? Most of us don't really think about this. So I'm going to give you an example. If you have an easy one, a 9 o'clock doctor's appointment. Think about how you would define on time for that 9 o'clock appointment. So I'll tell you what it doesn't mean. On time doesn't mean pulling in the parking lot at 9. It doesn't mean jumping in the elevator or sprinting up the steps or down the hallway at 9. It doesn't even mean blowing into the room like a whirlwind at 9 o'clock. It means being settled in, being fully present and fully transitioned and ready to go by 9. The same goes with any meeting, meetings at work or any other commitment with anyone else or anywhere else. We need to look at what on time means for different commitments. Next, look at how you think about scheduling appointments. Think about travel time. Travel time is much more than just driving time or passenger time. Yes, we need to take traffic and weather and other unexpected delays into account, but there are other things we need to take into account too that are a little bit less obvious. And I call this my time warp challenge. So all those little things that comprise leaving my house or leaving my office were never something I thought of. In my old house, the garage door was right beside the kitchen. And I used to say that door to the garage was a time warp because I could see the clock on the range in the kitchen and be on time, but somehow be late by the time I got to the car. And I used to joke around about it. And I even checked to make sure that the clock in my car and the clock in my kitchen were in sync. But it wasn't until I really dissected it that I made it make sense for me. So even when I was super organized, when I had all my stuff together right by the door, I'd still end up being a few minutes behind. So looking closer, it all made sense. Opening the garage door or opening the door to the garage, putting the garage door up, opening the car door, climbing in, buckling up, starting the car, disengaging the brake, putting the car in reverse, backing out, putting the door down, all that stuff. Every one of those things takes just seconds or portions of a second. But altogether, they add up, sometimes to another 3 to 5 minutes or more. And that's if I'm super organized and I don't have to run back in the house because I thought of something else that I'd forgotten. So you have to take into consideration all of those sort of time warp things. And you repeat all of that stuff on the other end. Park the car, put the car in park, turn it off, engage the brake, all that stuff. Get out, walk to the building. You get the picture. So if you start timing yourself and you see what the range of time is that all of those little things add up to include, you may be shocked. Next, in terms of thinking, you need to address and acknowledge the fear of being early. Most of my clients need to do some work here. They need to really identify and get in touch with why it mattered for them to be punctual. And again, it's a little different for each of us depending on our values and our lives and so on. But at the very minimum, if you can't work yourself through that fear on your own or with a coach, start thinking about how you can use any waiting time really constructively. Just catching up on email on your smartphone might not feel constructive enough. It might still feel like wasting time. So make sure you have an effective task management system or to-do list and look for creative ways you can actually get some of those things taken care of while you wait. It can make a big difference. I do my holiday greeting cards, for example, in between appointments while I wait. I have a whole system set up with a tote bag where everything, stamps, pens, address labels, cards, all of that stuff goes in this tote bag and I lug it around with me. So my cards are done a little bit at a time between appointments, in waiting rooms, waiting for kids, all that stuff. So if you can find something truly productive that you can do, it can help a lot with that fear of being early. Also, on the practical side of things, make sure you always wear a watch and put clocks everywhere that you can. And I have a strong preference for analog clocks, and I talk with this, talk with a lot of my clients about this. There's something different that happens when we process what we see visually on an analog clock, the old-fashioned clocks that have hands to tell time, compared to a digital clock. So if you have to leave at 8 and you see 7:56 on a digital clock, for example, you'll probably do the math and think about what you can do to fill those 4 minutes if you're anything like me. But when you see that same 7:56 on an analog clock, you're more likely to think, oh crap, I better get moving. It's a different way of processing time, but it can make a big difference. And I hear from people all the time, speaking of clocks and watches, that they don't need to wear a watch because they have a phone. They can tell the time on their phone. But I'd like you to think twice about that too. It's a disruption and an interruption to have to pull out your phone to unlock it and then look at it. And if you're in a meeting or even lunch with a friend, it looks a little bit rude. It looks a little bit disrespectful and a little bit like you're not paying attention. So at the very least, you can put an app on your phone that leaves a clock face visible when the phone screen locks, and it can make a huge difference. And do yourself a favor and set your clocks and your watches to the real time. So many of us have played this game, and I've tried to play the game years ago, but you're smarter than to try to fool yourself. It rarely helps. We usually just end up doing the math. So do yourself a favor and set it to the real time to help yourself really start to get a better handle on, your time blindness and your sense of time. If you want to be on time and in control, you need to make really good use of timers and alarms also. And they can be helpful in so many different ways. Just a couple quick ideas. One timer or one alarm is rarely enough. So for those of us with ADHD, transitions are hard. Switching from one activity to another is difficult. It takes time and it takes energy. So make sure you set a timer that gives you plenty of time to transition out of whatever it is that you're doing. And then have another timer, the one I always call my drop dead timer, that is actually the time that the task needs to end. So thinking differently about how you use timers and how you use alarms. And time tasks you do often, especially those that put you on the wrong side of punctuality. That can be a really big eye-opener. Playing time estimation games where you estimate how long something's going to take, then time it to compare reality with your estimation can really help with your awareness. And it improves your ability to judge, and it gives you real data you can use to make decisions. So if you're one who struggles with one more thingitis, this can be a big one. Knowing that it takes 7 minutes to fold a load of towels and 22 minutes on average to fold a load of whites in the laundry will make you think twice about emptying that dryer when you've only got 5 or 10 minutes before you have to leave. So timers and alarms can be, hugely helpful. And alarm clocks as well, especially in the morning. I want you to think about and really look at how you use your alarm clock. First of all, again, is it set to the right time? But really rethink the snooze. If you're someone who hits the snooze over and over and over again for, I've got clients who will go 30, 45 minutes plus with the snooze button over and over until they actually get up at the very last minute anyway, you're losing 30 to 45 minutes of good quality sleep. So rethink the snooze and rethink how you use your alarms. So I set 2 alarms. I have a dual alarm clock. I still have an old school alarm clock. And I have one alarm that goes off and the second one goes off just 3 minutes later. So there's, my feet need to hit the floor when that second alarm clock goes off. And I want you to think about working for it. Put your alarm clock across the room. If you use your phone or whatever you use, put it across the room, put it close to the bathroom. I've had clients who will put their alarm clock in the room, in the bathroom where they're going to get their shower. So they're almost right there. And if you really struggle with alarm clocks and getting up in the morning, it's really important that you take a good look at your sleep habits. Do you need to go to bed earlier? What do you need to do to get more sleep more often? One of the things that can be really important for many of us ADDers who are not morning people is to do what you can to clear the fog in the morning. So get yourself moving first thing. Think about what helps you clear that morning fog. Is it exercise? Are you better off if you shower right away? Some clients keep their meds right by their bedside so they can take it, first thing when the alarm goes off. And avoid things that put you back in the fog, things like the internet, TV, email, things like that. So this is kind of all about working on self-awareness. So I encourage my clients to keep a simple log or make notes on their calendar so that they can get to the real root practically of what's making them late. So start to pay attention to what's really going on with you. What are your time drains? Where do you get off track? And think about new sort of, I call them policies or non-negotiables for punctuality. Redefine on time. Redefine, your travel time, all of those things. And again, so much of punctuality goes back to having good task management and good time management systems, tools, and behaviors. And of course, I can't really go into those topics here now, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the power of routine and the power of habit and how much of a difference having good habits and solid routines or rhythms can make in your ability to be on time. So automate what you can. Put good evening routines in place that help your mornings, be much easier. Put good morning routines in place. Have checklists for yourself. So all you have to do is basically, tick stuff off to get out the door. Again, I've hit really the tippy tip of the iceberg here.
And the great thing is we do have people talking about routines and habits. So it's okay that you can't talk about that today.
Good.
Because this is something that is so important. I mean, being on time is so important, and not being on time can really damage us. So thank you so much for talking about this today, Lynne. So we are actually a little bit over time. We're at the end of the video. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to leave people with today? You can definitely make sure you give out your website information.
make sure you get the goodie bag. I will do a PDF transcript of this presentation in your goodie bag. So I know I speak really quickly. People always tell me, and I cover a lot of information. So make sure you get your goodie bag. If you have questions, you're welcome to contact me through my website. Again, it's www.coachingaddvantages.com. And again, my name is Lynne Edris. And thanks, Tara, for having me here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lynne. This episode of the ADHD Support Talk Radio podcast is sponsored by the ADHD Time Management Expert Series, 5 hours of on-demand webinars, which you can access completely free until April 17th, 2019. Sign up now for free by going to www.addclasses.com/time. That's www.addclasses.com/time.